A year since the start of lockdown, the nation falls silent for all the lives lost. The pandemic has claimed almost 150,000 victims in the past 12 months. Today, bereaved families and grieving friends paused to remember.
You feel this sense of loneliness and isolation because you're not able to grieve with family and friends as you've been able to in the past.
So, a year on, what have we learned then about COVID-19 and what could or should have been done differently? Also tonight, Sturgeon sees off her critics, defeating a no-confidence vote and insisting she won't be bullied out of office. More housing horror stories. Viewers respond to our special report with their own tales of squalor and decay. And a year under canvas and counting, the boy who's still sleeping out in all weathers in aid of charity.
This is the ITV Evening News with Mary Nightingale.
Good evening. The Prime Minister tonight paid tribute to all those who've died from coronavirus on the first anniversary of the first lockdown. Boris Johnson said the pandemic was like fighting in the dark against a callous and invisible enemy. But he claimed the country is now on the path to reclaiming its freedoms. A minute's silence was held today to remember the lives lost, and the Queen said it was a moment to pause and reflect. 1 year on, there are still thousands of new cases and more deaths every day. The latest data shows 5,379 new infections across the UK. Excuse me, and a further 112 deaths. There is one big difference, though. More than 28 million people have now had their first dose of vaccine. Here's Dan Rivers on a day of reflection and hope.
At noon, Britain united in an act of remembrance. Silence akin to the way we reflect on the fallen of wars past. But the struggle against COVID-19 is a battle we are still fighting. Our collective loss marked today with a similar solemnity to Armistice Day for a crisis which has scarred this country more than anything since the war. In Solihull, a road typical of Britain's suffering. Those who've isolated, sacrificed, standing with those who grieve. Marina and Neil Hames lost Walter, dad, husband, former Coventry footballer. He died exactly a year ago. Today is Marina's birthday, now an anniversary of high emotion, especially as Walter's funeral was only attended by 6 people.
To me, like it was just so sad, because the people who loved him, who liked him, couldn't go, wanted to, but couldn't go.
We still haven't seen so many members of our family in 12 months, and it feels like it's too late now to do something for my dad, and he never had what he deserved.
The psychological impact of this last year is all too clear on Marina, who was terrified the virus would take her next.
The whole house had to be cleaned and cleaned again and cleaned again. Because there was a living killer in my house, I was holding my breath while I was going round the house in case I breathed it in. What it does psychologically is, I just didn't think I could be like that.
Among the many tributes today, flowers sent by the Queen to St Bart's Hospital. She wrote of the immeasurable service of those who've supported us, Prince Charles reflecting on those the virus has taken.
Let us take a moment together to remember those who have been lost, to give thanks for their lives, and to acknowledge the inexpressible pain of parting.
A message which resonates with the family of Del Radway, still waiting to mourn him properly.
You feel this sense of loneliness and isolation because you're not able to grieve with family and friends as you've been able to in the past.
Del and Walter are just two of the 126,172 victims of COVID-19 who've been taken from us in a year. Today, we remember them. Dan Rivers, ITV News.
And our political correspondent Libby Wiener is in Downing Street for us tonight. Libby, the Prime Minister was asked this afternoon if he would have done anything differently. What did he say?
Yes, Mary. Well, he was challenged several times about this. He was the man running the country throughout this pandemic, and he did suggest that they had underestimated, for example, how easily COVID-19 was transmitted without people showing any symptoms. That might have been an issue close to his heart. If you remember, the disease was running rife in the building behind me this time last year, and of course the Prime Minister himself fell ill with it. But he was then challenged directly as to whether he had ordered the lockdown too late, and he seemed to suggest that it wouldn't have made much difference if he'd come to a different decision.
These are very, very hard decisions, and there are no good outcomes either way, as I think all our viewers understand. All these consequences are very, very tough for people, and all I can say is we took all the decisions with the interests of the British people foremost in our hearts.
Well, of course, the Labour leader, Sir Keir Starmer, today has suggested that the government did act too slowly. And it's a sentiment, I think, that the two men who flanked the Prime Minister today perhaps agree with Professor Chris Whitty and Sir Patrick Vallance. When asked as to why Britain did have the highest death rate in Europe, Chris Whitty said simply that we had a bad outcome. He added that other countries had had a bad outcome, but the most important thing now was to minimise deaths in future.
OK, Libby Wiener in Downing Street, thank you. Well, anyone attempting to holiday abroad will face a £5,000 fine under new coronavirus rules for England. Currently, people are banned from travelling out of the country without a reasonable excuse. But the restrictions are set to be lifted on May the 17th at the earliest. The third wave of the virus, though, in Europe has put that in doubt, as our consumer editor Chris Choi reports. It's put the dreams of many on hold.
Our TV screens are bursting with the promise of sunshine from holiday firms, but big questions remain on when and how foreign travel will resume. Andy and his mum Barbara have a cruise booked, though they're uncertain whether they'll get away.
They're saying 1 week to the next, no, you won't be going away this summer, and then the next week they're going, you might be. The might be gets your hopes up and gets you really excited.
I feel some days as though I'm never going to get away again.
Government is planning new legislation for England, imposing up to £5,000 fines for anyone leaving the UK without reasonable excuse. Valid reasons include work, study and major life events such as weddings and funerals. The law would be in force until June 30th, which some have seen as a new threat to summer holidays starting in May.
We've said that there will not be international travel before the 17th of May, and after that it will depend on the data. And crucially, we don't want to see a rise here in the number of new variants that might not be dealt with as effectively by the vaccine.
Holidays are supposed to be so relaxing, but anybody booking now faces the stress of uncertainty. On April the 12th, government announces its new framework for restarting foreign travel.
There's still some ongoing uncertainty at the moment.
And the travel trade insists neither the new fines or COVID variants need delay restarting overseas holidays as soon as May.
We feel that there is a way forward for when there are low infection rates and high numbers of vaccination, that people would actually be able to travel to those countries without the need to quarantine on the return.
They say half the fun of travel is getting there, but this year's journey towards summer holidays seems more stressful than ever. Chris Choi, ITV News.
Scotland's First Minister Nicola Sturgeon has survived a vote of no confidence over her government's handling of the Alex Salmond case. A Holyrood inquiry found serious flaws in the Scottish Government's approach, but she survived the vote comfortably and said it was now time for the country to decide who should lead it at the forthcoming elections. Here's our Scotland correspondent, Peter Smith.
Cleared of breaking ministerial code, Nicola Sturgeon still faced a vote of no confidence pushed by the Scottish Conservatives.
The honourable thing would be to resign. Whether the First Minister has that sense of honour is now between her and her conscience.
If you think you can bully me out of office, you are mistaken and you misjudge me. If you want to remove me as First Minister, do it in an election.
But the no confidence vote failed.
And the motion is therefore not agreed.
Nicola Sturgeon has survived, but is not entirely unblemished. Today, a second inquiry from politicians ruled the First Minister did mislead Parliament. But the only independent MSP on the committee who had the deciding vote says it will not cost the First Minister her job.
I don't think the First Minister knowingly misled the committee. Now, that might sound nuanced, but it's important that people understand these words because they, at the end of the day, matter. And the absence of the word knowingly is why she didn't breach the ministerial code.
Scotland's elections are in just 6 weeks.
I've had enough of her.
In Nicola Sturgeon's constituency, these inquiries have cut through.
He didn't exonerate her completely. And I think this is going to be held on by a lot of people.
It's been proven that she didn't breach the code, so I do have trust in her still, and I do still believe in her politics, yeah.
Polling experts say Nicola Sturgeon's reputation across Scotland is still intact.
Political leaders around the world will probably be quite envious of the ratings she has among the public even now.
And even after this bruising encounter?
Even after this, and I think a lot of it is down to leadership and communication style.
Nicola Sturgeon faced off 2 inquiries and a no confidence vote. The next judgment will be in the court of public opinion. Trust in her will be decided at the ballot box. Peter Smith, ITV News, Edinburgh.
Now, Boris Johnson responded today to our shocking report on the appalling living conditions facing residents at a tower block in South London. The Prime Minister said the fix came down to building more homes. Francois, the mother we featured yesterday, is now in safer temporary accommodation with her children. But as our political correspondent Daniel Hewitt reports, she still worries that she will be forgotten about.
For more than 4 months, throughout lockdown, over Christmas, a mum was forced to raise her 2 young sons in this. Despite constant calls to her landlord, Croydon Council, Francois got nowhere. But when we showed this footage to the council, they sent inspectors in and moved the family out on the same day. They're now in a local hotel.
So this is the room.
It is safe and warm, but with 2 kids, it is small and impractical.
Where are they going to eat? Where are they? I can't even wash clothes, nothing.
And she still has questions that remain unanswered.
Just like that, they want to respond because the media got involved. They want to be, oh, we're urgently getting them out of there and putting them into a temporary accommodation. At the moment, I don't know how long I'm going to be here.
Do you worry you'll be forgotten about here?
I do worry that I'll be forgotten about here.
Croydon Council has now begun an investigation into the treatment of residents in this tower block, as the Prime Minister today said there were questions for them to answer.
I greatly regret the story and the facts that you've uncovered just now. What we've got to do as a country is work together to build back better from the pandemic.
But ITV News has been sent example after example of people living in poor quality, dangerous homes from across the country. Severe leaking, black mould, damp, with complaints made to landlords, but very little done about it.
So in the bathroom, this is what we have to deal with.
In this flat in Lewisham, Abigail lives with her 2 children, a 5-month-old and a 5-year-old. Black mould and damp began appearing 6 months ago, spreading across the flat. And despite persistent calls to her housing association, it remains.
It's making me really feel depressed because I already feel worried for the health of my own kids. I contacted my landlord, who have done nothing about it. It's been a case of me having to chase them up.
Back in Croydon, that is a story Franzoy knows well. She returned to the flat this afternoon to collect clothes for her boys, no longer forced to live like this, but knowing others elsewhere still are. Daniel Hewitt, ITV News.
Still to come, the ITV Evening News, an exclusive report into the wait children face for help with their mental health. Plus, the hunt for the Bristol rioters. Police release pictures of those they want to speak to. That and more after the break. Join me then. Welcome back. ITV News has obtained exclusive figures showing that some young people are having to wait up to 4 years to access mental health services. A survey of health trusts in England and Wales found a huge disparity in waiting times. And with the pandemic putting young people under ever greater stress, accessing the right support is more important than ever, as our correspondent Rachel Younger reports.
Isla's life feels the opposite of orderly.
You make your own rules, don't you?
Yeah. At 9, she developed anxiety. By 10, a condition that means she can no longer cope without noise-cancelling headphones. And despite her school spelling out what was wrong, she's still on a waiting list, leaving her struggling with thoughts of suicide.
She told me she wants to die.
So you're afraid for her all the time?
I worry. I get up and check on her in the middle of the night to make sure she's okay. And it sounds stupid, but I don't know what to do.
It took 1.5 years to get even a first appointment. With the second months away, Isla's getting worse.
Quite desperate and I just need help. I can't really wait any longer. It's just going to get worse and worse.
It's all very well saying we have a service set up for it and you can come along and we'll help you. But when you come along and then you get told, well, actually, thanks for walking in the door, we'll catch up with you in 2.5 years. How is that helpful?
ITV News asked all 62 mental health trusts with children's services in England and Wales about their waiting times. Of the 32 that responded, 11, that's over a third, had children waiting over 1 year for their first appointment. In Rotherham, the longest wait is 872 days. In South London, 1,497. The average waiting time is a far more reasonable 58 days, but again, there's a postcode lottery. In Sussex, it's 3 times that at 180 days, and in Leicestershire, it's 226. That gap, the subject of a parliamentary inquiry today into whether the government's delivering its promises on children's mental health.
There's a big disparity between what's spent on children and what's spent on adults. On average, local CCG areas spend less than 1% of their overall budget on children's mental health and 14 times more on adult mental health.
For those working with young people, the strain is clear. This psychologist spent years at CAMHS and now provides digital counselling for the NHS.
I think there is a crisis. Sometimes it can feel as though you're trying to help people with your hands tied behind your back, and you don't have adequate resources, and you can see the numbers creeping up.
In a statement, the government told us it's providing an extra £2.3 billion to help 345,000 more children access either NHS-funded services or support in schools and colleges. But while Isla feels increasingly alone, it's clear her story is far from isolated. Rachel Younger, ITV News, Surrey.
Now, detectives have issued images of people they want to speak to over the violence and rioting in Bristol on Saturday night. 20 officers were injured in ugly scenes, condemned by the Home Secretary. Rupert Evelyn is in the city tonight. So, Rupert, police are determined then to hunt down those responsible.
Yeah, they said yesterday that this could well be one of the largest hunts for suspects that Avon and Somerset Police has ever seen. Late this afternoon, we got the first 10 images of people that the police would like to speak to in connection with the disorder in this city and around this police station here on Sunday night. They have been wading through, they say, hundreds of hours of footage from body-worn cameras, from social media already, and they are likely to continue doing that for quite some time as they attempt to ascertain exactly who was responsible for the rioting that took place in this city on Sunday night and begin the process of questioning and bringing people to justice. There's a heavy police presence in Bristol again tonight. It's a nervous place as once again a protest is planned and police are watching it.
OK, Rupert Evelyn in Bristol, thank you. And finally, the start of lockdown last year saw many of us change our habits and lifestyles, didn't it? One 10-year-old boy from Surrey swapped his bedroom for a tent to get a bit of space. And every night since, he has camped in his garden and helped raise thousands for charity too. He told Martha Fairley he's not stopping yet.
When Freddie Owen asked to sleep in the garden at the start of lockdown, neither he nor his parents imagined he'd spend every night since camping outside.
In the first night, it was a bit rocky and rather uncomfortable, but I ended up enjoying it and it was fun.
So what's the appeal of sleeping outside for you?
Well, it's really the owls at night, the birds in the morning, the rain on my tent, the wind.
Freezing temperatures, sleet and snow have not put Freddie off, even after his tent blew down on top of him during Storm Aidan.
I woke up with half my head, half my face damp and wet, and I started thinking, oh no. It took me at least solid 5 minutes to get out of my tent and realise that it had been completely collapsed and wrapped around one of the poles on this pergola it's now sitting on.
After that, Freddie decided to use his outdoor adventure to help fight food poverty. With the help of his family, he's raised more than £15,000 for the Trussell Trust. And this Friday, his friends will be taking part too.
His school, they're doing Sleep Out to help out. A lot of the kids, they're not necessarily sleeping out because not everybody's going to have all the equipment or maybe the right situation to do it. But either the kids sleep inside, but they make a den, or they sleep on the sofa or something.
And Freddie has no plans to move back to his bedroom. He says he wants to keep on camping, whatever the weather. Martha Fairley, ITV News, Woking.
Well done, Freddie, and that's it for now. Tom's here with news at 10 from me and all the team here. Stay safe, stay well. Bye-bye.